don't like to brag that we are the toughest sports network in Detroit, but we do have a guy named Darren McCarty on our side. Woodward Sports.
Welcome to the Morning Woodward Show live on the Woodward Sports Network. I am Flannel Sam, and I don't know if I appreciate that thumbnail. I feel like it was repurposed, but it's all well and good. Thank you, Ryan Lentz in the back. But to my right, Anson Wells. You may recognize him from the post-game shows that he usually does with Stick. And how are you feeling this morning?
I'm tired and super happy to be here.
Awesome, man. And I'm happy to have you here as well. And I'm glad you're here because I get to get some of your thoughts as time has passed since the NFC Championship game. We have JB Smoove in the TD booth and Brandon Dent, a.k.a. Detroit Kool-Aid, in the audio booth. And so, Anson, I wanted to just get right into it. The NFC Championship game. Everybody heard your thoughts on the post-game show. It was there was a lot of traffic there, and your thoughts were well known, but it was raw at the time. The game had just happened. I mean, there was a lot of emotion. There was some talk about whether it was a successful season or a missed opportunity. Obviously, they blew a 17-point halftime lead. But as time has passed, do you see it more as a missed opportunity, or just you can look back at this season as a massive success?
I think that you can do both.
Okay.
It is an absolute success. I mean, we got to where we would have all begged to be at the start of the season. But at the same time, when you're knocking on that kind of a doorstep that we've never crossed the threshold of, you have to capitalize. And to be up the way that we were, it's nothing but a massive, massive missed opportunity. At the same time, there's the silver lining, because this team is on the up. They're going to meet and I think exceed the expectations I had for them all season of 2024 being the year. And what the groundwork that they laid this year, it tells me that this team is ready to truly take that step next year. They got 3 games of playoff experience, but losing that Super Bowl, man, it still stings so, or not making the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, losing that game, it just stings so bad still.
So what has been your range of emotions? I mean, do you feel better now than you did on Sunday, or kind of the same?
I mean, I've just numbed myself to it. You know, I can pat myself on the back thinking that what I saw them doing in the offseason this season was going to be, you know, filling in the major holes that was all across this team, and then figuring out what the few little holes that we had to fill in this offseason were, just maybe get some playoff experience. But it was really just so much more than that, this opportunity that was let go. And for me, it's hard to think about. I don't really want to talk about it right now. There's too many months before the draft to talk about it. And, you know, I've been diving into my sports cards, man, and trying not to think of it. But at the same time,
yeah, I
am optimistic. I do understand where this team's going, and it certainly feels different than any other offseason.
Oh, 100%. And Eduardo O'Neill, he's been in the chat all this week. Thank you so much, by the way. While I am proud of the team, this season is still a disappointment because of how they lost. And I think it's kind of harsh to say that the season is a disappointment, but at the same time, 17-point leads in the NFC Championship game, they don't grow on trees. In fact, they rarely happen. In fact, as I've been saying all week, many things can be true. The Lions could get back. They could win one of these. They could win a Super Bowl, but they may never again have a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game. And we're going to get into more of why we should be optimistic. I mean, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, neither of them got a head coaching job. We're going to talk about that later. We're going to talk about Frank Ragnow, Brian Branch. We're going to talk about some of the best memories we have from this Lions season. And also, since Anson is here, we're going to get into a little Pistons and Michigan State.
Right,
I know Pistons is your first love, and you are most certainly a Sparty. And Kool-Aid, before we go to break, I want to get back to you again. Just as almost a week has passed, are you still feeling pretty optimistic, or does the pain come and go in waves for the NFC Championship game?
Hey, it's a little bit of both, man. And honestly, the pain is what fuels my optimism, because this team is built the right way. The foundation is there. The building that they have on top of that foundation is there. But now they got to go up and finish the penthouse suite. And I think that they have the right guys in place to do that. You look at the start to their offseason, which starts with the coaches and the coordinators coming back because they believe in what's going on here, even though they could have gotten other positions, other head coaching jobs. And then the hiring of the defensive tackle coach, Williams, from the Titans. It shows that this team is serious about fixing and righting the wrongs and making sure that heading into next season, it's a go.
Was it you that mentioned it, or was it somebody else? That the defensive line, I know that it wasn't the most talented, but it was one of the weak spots of this season for the Lions, and the fact that they addressed it by hiring the new coach. That was you, and I think that was it's hard because I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about the former Tennessee Titans defensive line coach or anything like that. But at the same time, I think when it comes to your deficiencies, you might as well try to fix them. I mean, when you talk about the Lions, they've shown that when coaches aren't necessarily working, they're ready to get rid of them, i.e. Anthony Lynn and Aubrey Pleasant. And I'm not saying that in the case of Aubrey Pleasant, it was just like, okay, now he's gone, now the Lions are all of a sudden good. But in the case of Anthony Lynn, I'll tell you what, Ben Johnson kind of got elevated, and the Lions offense has pretty much been good ever since. And let's go to break now, and coming up next, we're going to have a nice long segment about Aaron Glenn. And are you guys excited to have him back? Do you feel the same excitement as Ben Johnson? But before we go to break, I'm going to tell you about Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness is home of the judgment-free zone where anyone, and we mean anyone, can feel comfortable and work on their fitness goals. At Planet Fitness, you will experience a squeaky clean gym that has tons of equipment, a full-body workout in just 30 minutes, and all memberships include fitness training. You get all of this for only $10 a month, no commitment. No matter where you are, there's a Planet Fitness close by. There are more than 50 in Metro Detroit and thousands more throughout the world. It's Planet Fitness, where your fitness is essential.
Love Woodward Sports? Love wearing clothes? Then you should be wearing Woodward Sports clothes. Check out our full line of merch at woodwardsports.com. Just click on Shop. We have all your favorite designs, like Dan Campbell kneecaps, Woodward Golf, and of course, our own logoed out merchandise. Men, women, infants, kids, all love Woodward Sports. Impress your friends. Impress your boss. Impress your dog. Buy Woodward Sports merch today.
What up, Woodward Sports? Dispo Dispensary is bringing you the ultimate experience for the big game in Vegas, and they want you there. You can win 2 tickets to the big game, plus a flight, hotel, and accommodations by following these simple steps. First, follow Dispo.Michigan, @ShowMedicated, and @ShowMedicatedCBD on Instagram. Like Dispo's pinned post, comment and tag someone you love to bring. Plus, if you repost on your story, you get an extra entry. It's that easy. Join the Dispo family for a chance to score in Vegas. The big game awaits. Follow, like, tag, and repost now.
You have an opinion? Make sure it's seen and heard. Corner, jumper, tweet us, hop on the YouTube chat, slide in the DMS at Woodward Sports on all social media.
What happens when you run a great business for over 50 years? You expand and offer products to more people. This is exactly what Les Stanford did by adding Les Stanford Buick GMC. The same great service that customers have come to know and trust. On Woodward Avenue, just south of 9 Mile. Check out Les Stanford in Dearborn today. Find the brand you want at lesstanford.com. All right, welcome back to the Morning Woodward Show, live on the Woodward Sports Network. I am Flannel Sam, and the man to my right, Anson Wells. You may know him from the Lions postgame shows. And before we get into the Aaron Glenn stuff, Chuck Brewer, you're kind of starting to make me mad early this morning. And the opposite then, how could you hire Ben Johnson, who was handed a 17-point lead and couldn't stop scoring? Stop it. It was a team loss, and we didn't make enough plays. And Anson, for those of you who don't know, you probably don't know, Chuck Brewer has been one of the harshest critics of Ben Johnson throughout the year. And I'm not saying that you don't like him or anything like that, but at the same time, and we went through it a couple days ago as well, I had some issues with Ben Johnson's third quarter play calling at times this year, and even in the NFC Championship game. He's not perfect. Sometimes in the red zone, they got a little bit too cute. But when I really took some emotion out of it and broke it down, if Josh Reynolds catches that pass, they probably go to the Super Bowl. If Josh Reynolds catches that 3rd and 10 after San Francisco 49ers had tied the game, they probably score on that drive. I'm not saying that they automatically go to the Super Bowl, but getting some points after the 49ers had tied it up would have been a big deal. And on the first play of the drive in between, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbled. I don't necessarily think those plays in general were Ben Johnson's fault. I'm not saying he was perfect. I'm just saying, like, Chuck Brewer, do you want to run him out of town at this point? That's what I'm asking. And Chuck Brewer did respond. Sam, it was a reply to the person complaining about AG. All right, that's fair. And I think that's a pretty good segue into Aaron Glenn, because some good news, depending on who you may ask. I think we most for the most part we see it as good news, was that neither Ben Johnson nor Aaron Glenn got a head coaching job in the NFL this year, and it seems like at least Ben Johnson for sure and Aaron Glenn presumably will be back. And I think we've already talked about Ben Johnson. It was basically a celebration where it kind of helped ease the pain of the NFC Championship game, but we got Ben Johnson back. But we also got Aaron Glenn back, and I think the responses to that are going to be a little bit more mixed because the Lions' defense, even though it made lots of improvements, overall throughout the year, it was not a good defense, although it was improved from last year. So I'll ask you first, Anson. Are you excited to have Aaron Glenn back as a defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions? Are you excited he didn't get a head coaching job, and presumably he's back?
Well, first, I mean, we have to address the facts. He had an underwhelming roster.
Sure.
All right? He did a lot with what he was given. He's developed guys. At the same time, I think that there's a lot of guys that are miscast on this defense. He's asking players to do things that they aren't that comfortable doing, i.e. Hutchinson having his hands in the dirt. I think he'd rather line up straight up and rush. But you've got to remember that if this guy leaves, you get 2 third-round picks for him.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's more than just, is this guy the right defensive coordinator for this team? I'm certainly not as excited about him staying as I was hearing about Ben Johnson.
Yes.
But I have been very vocal last offseason and heading in throughout this entire year. I didn't think we were losing Ben Johnson. I think that this team has bought into something very different than you see from most franchises. It's not about money. It is about rectifying a completely broken franchise and doing something that they've never done before. The fact that we're even talking about and expecting a Super Bowl berth next year speaks volumes to, I'm the SOL guy, but at the same time, we're talking about a brand new Lions team and the fact that we really believe that they're going to be there. Ben Johnson's going to be a huge part of that. And as much as I would love to have those 2 third-round picks, change is the great indicator of failure in the NFL. So when you bring these guys back and you give AG some real weapons, and now, like one of the guys said it in here, Tennessee, their strength is their defensive line. So we're going to get a chance to address that both at the coaching position, through the draft, and through free agency. So let's give AG some weapons and see how good he really is.
And that's always been the question with the Detroit Lions, because their defense, it did show improvement from last year, and it had some moments where you could see that AG adjusted. Going into the Denver Broncos game, he sent more pressure with the safeties, and Ife Melifonwu kind of turned into a pass-rushing demon, and Brian Branch got home a couple of times. And the defense overall was better, even though the guys like Cam Sutton gave up a lot of big plays to number 1 receivers. They would almost always win those games. I think the one that they lost in the regular season in the first couple rounds of the playoffs was the Cowboys game, in which there's a lot of controversy, I will say, and of course they lost the NFC Championship game as well. But I'll go to you, Kool-Aid, because I want to kind of go around the room and get the temperature. Are you happy that Aaron Glenn did not get a head coaching job, and presumably he's back as the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions?
A lot what Anson said, man. I believe that this was a healthy mix of maybe some Aaron Glenn deficiencies as well as personnel deficiencies. But towards the end of that season, when he started to kind of scheme up some blitzes, change up the coverage a little bit, I actually kind of liked what was going on, because I felt like they were getting a lot more out of the lack of talent there. I'm not as happy, as we were with Ben Johnson. I know that Ben Johnson was probably the top head coaching candidate on the market. For him to come back to the Detroit Lions, it meant something a little bit more than Aaron Glenn coming back to the Detroit Lions. The unfinished business for Ben Johnson, in my opinion, is getting this team to a Super Bowl, but the unfinished business for Aaron Glenn is proving that he's actually a decent defensive coordinator. I know that there was a player poll that stated that he would be probably the top head coach out of the all of the coordinators that are not coaches that they would like to play for. And I do. I think he has those types of capabilities, those types of, personality or whatnot. But as it relates to defensive coordinator, I am happy with consistency, especially with running it back. Your formula did get you within 20 minutes of a Super Bowl, but I am really hoping to see him take hold of this defense and really take things to another level, as we know Brad Holmes is going to bring in some more talent.
Yeah, and I think you said it very well. And Cody Ingle in the chat, who I sometimes agree with and sometimes disagree with, I think he puts it very well and goes along with how I'm thinking. I'm not a huge Glenn fan, but I'd rather have him stay than go. He's a huge locker room guy and did a ton with less. He didn't have the weapons Ben Johnson had, and that's always been the thing when it comes to this defense. Is it more personnel or scheme? And even in some points during the year, the Lions did play well defensively. They got timely stops. They got some turnovers. They held teams like the Rams in the wild card round of the playoffs to field goals instead of touchdowns. And even when you look at the season as a whole, because their defense, when you look by the numbers, was still not good, but it was much improved over the year before. In 2022, for example, I'll just show you how much they improved. They were the 5th worst in the NFL in points allowed per game at 25.1, and in 2023, they were the 10th worst at 23.2, so almost a 2 points per game difference when it comes to this year and last year, and that doesn't even take into account, I can think of 2 Jared Goff pick sixes off the top of my head, and the fumble 6 against the Packers, and those certainly aren't the defense and Aaron Glenn's fault. But where the defense really took a leap, actually a leap that nobody was expecting and a hell of a leap, was the run defense, because in 2022, believe it or not, they were the 4th worst. They allowed 146.5 rushing yards per game. And in 2023, they went all the way to the 2nd best by the numbers for an entire season. They allowed less than 90 rushing yards per game. And we all know that was the strength of the defense, but the fact that that was able to be such a strength that it went from being terrible the year before to elite in 2023, that's pretty staggering. And in 2022, the Lions were worst in the NFL in total yards allowed per game at 392.4. And in 2023, they were the 19th best at 336.1. And that is despite the fact that at 2 positions you had people that you thought were going to be big-time contributors that basically did not play the whole year. James Houston as that bookend edge rusher opposite Aiden Hutchinson. I know that nobody thought that he was going to be that every down guy, but the year before in 2022, he had 8 sacks in 7 games, and I think that everybody thought that he was going to be a key contributor this year. And then you look at Emmanuel Mosley, who probably, if he would have stayed healthy, would have been your cornerback 1. He comes back after the ACL injury, plays 2 plays, and tears it again, and is out for the whole year. You have to take that into account. You also have to take into account the way that guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, Brian Branch, Alex Anzalone, James Houston last year, Kirby Joseph, Ife Melifonwu, they all made either leaps from last season to this season, had amazing rookie years like Brian Branch, or improved throughout the year, and by the end of the year were able to be big-time contributors on this team, i.e. Ife Melifonwu, I think, is the one that really stands out.
Fantastic.
He was absolutely fantastic. So I think that there's a place for Aaron Glenn. I think I would like to see what he could do with more talent on the defense, which presumably the Lions could add in the offseason through another draft and free agency period.
Yeah, they're in a great situation to really address the defensive side of the ball heavily at this point. And you kind of touched on it, how this team, they were good defensively this year, a lot better than they were last year. But the last 6 weeks, I saw this team transform their defense.
Yes.
The scheming was very, very different. And I think it's probably a good segue here shortly, but what I saw in that second half of that final game, I felt like they just completely went away from what they had been doing. They had been so physical, and they had been non-transparent in how they were bringing their rushes, whether it was coming from the secondary, where they were dropping guys. I was really, really impressed. And I think Ife made a huge, huge impact on this defense, the way that he played. But the scheming was very, very different as well. And I thought that played a huge part in our playoff run. I don't know where it went, though, in the second half against the 49ers.
Yeah, in the second half, there were a myriad of. But we always look at the offense as you know, the fourth down that was the 2 Josh Reynolds drops, the one on the 4th down, the one on the 3rd down, the Jahmyr Gibbs fumble. But you're right, the Lions defense couldn't get any stops in the second half as well. And I get it, they gave up that lucky play to Brandon Ayuk, but other than that, it was just in the first half they were stopping Christian McCaffrey. In the second half, Christian McCaffrey went off. Yeah. In the first half, Brock Purdy wasn't having a great game. He threw a pick, and in the second half, he pretty much shredded the Detroit Lions defense. So yeah.
I got a great stat for you. Only one time in the history of the Super Bowl era has a team had 3 guys rush for over 40 yards and 1 touchdown in the first quarter. All right, or the first half, excuse me. We did that with J-Mo and both Monty and Gibbs. Where the hell was the run game in the second half?
Well, that's the big question, because in the first half, another great stat is all three of those guys had more rushing yards in the first half than Christian McCaffrey did. But by the end of the game, Christian McCaffrey had more rushing yards than any of those three guys. It really was a tale of two halves, and we've touched on it during the week during the show. In the first half, the Lions ran for 148 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the second half,
in the first half.
Yes, and in the second half, they rushed for only 34.
SOL in the second half.
I mean, I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but that was a very SOL second half. And I don't think that this is SOL, this team, but at the same time, that was a biblically bad second half.
But see, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is these guys will break your effing heart, you know? And it does. It smells, tastes, looks completely different. And we have real aspirations and expectations of a Super Bowl bid next year, but man.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a 27-0 run given up. That's
so hard.
That doesn't happen. It just took so many things going wrong. And yeah, the running game being abandoned. Like on the first drive, I know David Montgomery had some nice carries. I think he had 3 for 18 on that drive. But then again, on that 3rd and 4, leading into that 4th and 2, they decided to give the ball to St. Brown. Yeah. And of course, St. Brown is a hell of a weapon as a pass catcher. But you had David Montgomery back there, who on that drive had been averaging 6 yards per carry. You had Jahmyr Gibbs as an option. This was before he fumbled, by the way, who had picked up a 3rd and 12 previously in the game and had a 15-yard touchdown. So that was a big one. The second drive, obviously, the first play was a run to Jahmyr Gibbs in which he fumbled, and then the third drive there was that where they went 3 and out. It was 1 run and then 2 passes to Laporta and Reynolds. Laporta actually kind of had himself a drop as well, but the Reynolds one was definitely the more egregious one. But yeah, when you look at this, it was just a total team failure.
They just controlled the tempo so well in the first half by utilizing the run game. I don't even remember seeing play action in the second half much at all. And to just do that, the way that the text messages and phone conversations I had during halftime on my drive here compared to what we were discussing after the game, I'm telling you, there was so many 75-year-old Detroit Lions fans that were, I told you. I told you.
Oh,
and that's not what we wanted, man. I mean, I don't think I was right. I never wanted to say that this team is in that old stage, because they are a brand new Lions organization. But at the same time, when you end a season the way that you historically have played for the last 75 years, it's hard to fully say they're here. They're here for good. That old stuff is behind us, because that old stuff was fully on display in the second half of the NFC Championship.
That's what's crazy, though, is the second half. Yeah, it was complete. It was a choke job. It was a meltdown. It was all of that. But in the first half, the way that the Lions played in that first half, that was the best I've seen any football team play all year, any NFL team play all year. And then it was
against one of the best, man. We were just dominating.
They physically beat the piss out of them.
Yeah,
it was complete and utter domination. But unfortunately, the second half wasn't great at all. And now we have people talking SOL, which we never wanted. And Anson, I know you would agree with me when I make that statement. This statement: if before the season you were guaranteed a division title, 12 wins, 2 playoff wins, including 1 over the Matthew Stafford-led Rams, every single one of us would have taken that result in a heartbeat.
All day long.
But unfortunately, you also didn't take into account having a 17-point halftime lead in the NFC Championship game. So overall, very, very successful season, but at the same time, it was disappointing. And one of the reasons that the Lions were successful to me was Aaron Glenn making those adjustments later into the year. And overall, I think being a net positive for this team, but I still think he needs to show some more when it comes to getting more talent, actually putting together an actual good defense, not one that's just better, bend but don't break, but an actual good defense. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's what makes me optimistic about the hiring of Terrell Williams coming to this Lions defense. Man, he had a pretty nice he did a really nice job with the Titans underneath Vrabel. I thought that staff was a power staff. To be able to go and take somebody from that culture and add it to Aaron Glenn's staff, you know what, I thought he did well for the talent that he had on this team last season with the Detroit Lions. Improvements across the board. despite the fact that they dealt with major injuries to their defensive line and the defensive backfield. The only unit that seemed to be kind of intact the way that they had planned it were the linebackers. Everything else kind of on the outside of those things is where they absolutely had to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? And, you know, there's so many questions across the board, especially with Aiden Hutchinson. Does he need more help? Did he take a step back as it relates to his ability to get the quarterback on the ground and whatnot? I believe that the Detroit Lions, starting with Brad Holmes, Sheila, and Dan Campbell, they've shown that they're not afraid to go out there and make the necessary decisions and the necessary changes. And I believe that if Aaron Glenn is still here, it's because those decision makers, those people at the top, they still believe in what he's bringing to the table, both as a motivator, both as a coach to be able to coach guys up, both as a scheme and a playmaker and things of that nature, putting his guys in position to make plays. Because we saw a lot of opportunistic plays last year, a lot of schemes that towards the end of the game where a cornerback might have been getting burnt. All of a sudden, these guys are turning in game-ending interceptions, like against the Vikings and against Baker, to be able to end that game with an interception and whatnot. Those are the types of things that I did see. I'm not saying that I think he's going to go in next year and be this world beater on defense. I hope he is. But I do have to trust what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are seeing out there, and to be able to bring him more support, both in the coaching ranks as well as talent. I think it's Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell more or less admitting that they need to do just as much more as we think Aaron Glenn needs to do as well, and it makes me optimistic going into next season.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, because the Lions, as currently constructed, I don't think they're capable of having I don't want to say a good defense, but one that is a championship level defense. And I get it, you don't necessarily have to have a championship level defense if you have an offense as good as the Lions, but they do need to add more players. And obviously guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Brian Branch and Jack Campbell and Kirby Joseph presumably will get better. You would probably,
Flannel, how many of our defenders would you say would be sure starters on another team? I mean, you got Hutchinson.
Yes.
I think Branch at this point.
Yes.
You know, maybe Campbell next year, but there's not another dude on that defense. I mean, Kirby Joseph is not a starting safety in the NFL. He's starting for us, and he's been solid, but that guy should be one of your bench pieces. He should be your depth piece. If you're going to be a playoff team, Kirby Joseph is not your starting safety. And you look up and down that defensive roster, there's 4 or 5 guys at best that you'd say, yes, he's going to start on the majority of football teams. We have a lot of guys that they have picked up and developed and gotten way more out of. So if you give AG some young guys like he did with Campbell and some of these other guys, Branch that they drafted, and then you get a few more fill-ins that aren't hurt all season long and getting burnt like Sutton, I think that this defense could really take a whole new life. Like you went through those stats, this was the second best run defense in the NFL. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
So to think that if you add in a few other pieces that you can't take that jump in the passing game as well defensively, I like where these guys are headed, especially with the cap space in our situation. Our offense, set it and forget it. We need a little offensive line help. I think I'd love to see a 3rd or 4th round stab at a wide receiver, because it's just a fantastic class. You know, give me an Adonai Mitchell or a Xavier Legette or something.
yeah.
But we don't have to address the offense very much. The defense can get so much of our focus and so much of our capital, and you give AG that, man, and I'm excited to see what he does.
Because that's my question to people is, to those that believe AG's time should be up, that he's on borrowed time right now, what in his schemes over like the last 6 or 7 games and the playoffs would you have changed given the circumstance of their personnel?
Probably nothing. I think what he needed to change was just rushing 4 at that point, because there was a long stretch of time where the Lions weren't getting a ton of pressure. And even though, as we've always said, when they made that adjustment, when they sent more blitzes, it left the corners more vulnerable to getting burnt one-on-one by some of the best receivers in the NFL. But the Lions won all of those games, and they made the stops when they needed to. They made they created the turnovers when they needed to. They held teams to field goals when they needed to. Hell, in the in the early second half against the Buccaneers, they got some actual stops, including a 3-and-out when they needed to. So this defense, it was enough for the Lions to get as far as they did this year, but I agree for the most part that the Lions don't have the talent of what is a good defense. But people are kind of upset with you for your Kirby Joseph take, Anson.
I'm a Kirby Joseph fan, guys. I really like him, but he's a depth piece on a championship team. He's not your starting safety.
I don't necessarily hate that. On a championship team, obviously Kirby Joseph can start for a lot of teams in the NFL, but a lot of teams aren't championship teams. There's a lot of five-win teams, 6-win teams out there, and I like Kirby as well. I respect the fact that each of his first 2 seasons, he's led the Lions in interceptions both years. But as we all know, secondary play isn't all about interceptions because you're also going to get burned from time to time, be out of position. And Kirby, I mean, I'm not going to kill you on that. Kirby's not somebody that I die on the hill for. I'll probably, like you said, who would be starters on other teams right now? Hutch, Aleem. I'd say Aleem McNeil. I would say Brian Branch, and I'd probably go Anzalone with how well he played this year.
And that's a bottom half of the teams. Like Anzalone is not starting for the 49ers.
No,
we know that.
No.
You know?
No. But you know what? I know people have some mixed feelings about the defense and Aaron Glenn, and with us rehashing the NFC Championship game again, I know people are just like in pain over that. But coming up next, we're going to talk about someone that everybody agrees on, everybody loves, and that is one Frank Ragnow. But first, if you're feeling the pain, you should go to Dispo. Experience Dispo Dispenser, a team that curates an unbelievable atmosphere. Dispo is now giving out 2 tickets plus hotel and flight accommodations to this year's big game in Vegas. Go on Dispo's Instagram page at dispo.michigan and follow directions on the pin post. Or scan the QR code and it will take you there. Let's get you sports fans to Vegas. Dispo Dispensary, disposhops.com, your local cannabis plug.
Have you ever wondered where all the finest restaurants get their steaks? It's Fairway Packing Company, providing Michigan restaurants, hotels, and casinos with prime beef for over 60 years. But now you can buy these cuts of meat for yourself at the Steak Shop by Fairway Packing Company. Prime porterhouse, A5 Japanese New York strip steak, dry aged Wagyu beef tomahawk. Delicious. Get to the Steak Shop today. Enjoy fine wine, have a private party, and get the finest cuts of meat anywhere. The Steak Shop on Mack Avenue in Grosse Pointe Woods, or order online, fairwaypacking.com.
A ton of fun, a ton of sports, and a ton of man-meat. Welcome to the Woodward Heavyweights, live daily 5 to 7 p.m. on Woodward Sports.
Where's the most convenient place to get that big fitness energy?
It's Planet Fitness.
Join today for just $1 down, $10 a month. With over 2,400 locations and equipment for every workout, you can get in, get energized, and get going. And with free fitness training and most clubs open 24 hours, everyone belongs in the judgment-free zone. So join today for $1 down, $10 a month, no commitment, cancel anytime.
Are you tired of wearing the same old Detroit sports merch? It's a new era in sports wearables, new designs, amazing apparel, and the ultimate swag. Check out Woodward Sports' latest gear at woodwardsports.com and click shop. Hoodies, tees, and hats that are guaranteed to turn heads. Get the latest designs today at woodwardsports.com and click shop. Welcome back to the Morning Woodward Show live on the Woodward Sports Network. I am Flannel Sam. The man to my right is Anson Wells. You may know him from the Lions postgame shows that he does with Stick and a rotating crew that includes guys like Maz, Kool-Aid, Pete Spivak, KG's been here as well, Spencer Raxter, Easy. That is always a good time. So I'm glad to have you here today to rehash some of the game after the emotion has kind of worn off, and also talk some optimistic things when it comes to the Lions, or some question marks, because Frank Ragnow, I think to some extent, is both. And JB, I've got the tweet, and it just shows what Frank Ragnow has done this season when it comes to pass blocking. I mean, look at those numbers. Those are absolutely astronomical. Wow. Only allowed 23 pressures, 1 sack. how many? I can't exactly read that, but
3.4% pressure percentage.
3.4% pressure
One
percentage.
sack all season?
One sack all
Wow.
season allowed. Frank Ragnow he's the best center in the NFL right now. And
Yes, sir.
by the way,
Pro Bowler.
when it comes to a certain website that I like and some don't, called Pro Football Focus, you might like this now because it's very favorable to Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow was the #1 rated center according to PFF. And by the way, along with all of those phenomenal pass blocking stats, is the #1 rated run blocking center in the entire NFL according to PFF. All of that is phenomenal. And first, I want to ask you this question before I go to the question marks. How valuable has Frank Ragnow been to this team in this turnaround?
I don't think you can't even really put it into terms because his play on the field has been amazing, but he's also been here for 6 years. He's really our longest tenured Lion. And I mean, yeah, he's been a little injured, but what this guy brings to your huddle and to your locker room, I think is every bit as big and important to this team as his play on the field.
Oh yeah, and he's one of the veteran guys. He's one of the few Bob Quinn good things that he did by bringing in Frank Ragnow to this team. And just 670 pass blocking snaps, 23 quarterback pressures allowed, 1 sack, and a 3.4 pressure percentage. I mean, those are elite numbers.
All pro numbers.
All pro numbers. I'm talking future Hall of Fame numbers if he keeps this up, given the fact that he's already had a hell of a career up to this point. I mean,
so we got the best center and the best left tackle in the game.
Absolutely. Best center, I would say Penei Sewell's the best offensive lineman, period.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a consensus around us Lion fans. Yes, and Kool-Aid, I'll ask you the same question. How valuable has Frank Ragnow been to this Lions team, into this turnaround?
Oh, very valuable. And one of the ways that I absolutely love when players can contribute is when they become those Iron Men, those guys who they raise the level of what other people believe is possible. They raise the ceiling that everybody else has to go to make sure they get on that field. Because, just being in sports, there are times where you'll play to your ceiling and don't know that you can actually push through that. And Frank Ragnow is one of those guys that I believe represents that. So just aside from what he brings from a production standpoint, to know that this guy is not letting anything beat him, like no injuries, he's just going out there and he's giving it his all, and I think it's great. It's great is the perfect word. I think it's great, especially if they go into this draft or this offseason and bring in some more offensive line help, especially if it's of the younger variety.
Yeah, and Frank Ragnow's value cannot be overstated. And Chuck Brewer in the chat, Sewell is our best offensive lineman, but Frank Ragnow is our most valuable offensive lineman. I can't necessarily disagree with that, especially since he's the center. He's got to touch the ball every play. What a center does is just he's one of the most important positions on the football field. And Vincent Ellison, Frank is the Terminator. I don't think anybody would disagree with that at this point, especially with the way that he's fought through injuries and not really missed games. And I wanted to talk about Frank Ragnow's greatness and what he's done for this team, but unfortunately, Frank Ragnow has taken on some attrition. And I pulled up this Tim Twentyman article. Speaking to reporters Monday as the Lions clean out their lockers, the Lions All-Pro center said he's not sure if he'll need any surgeries this offseason for the injuries he's played throughout the season. And these are Frank Ragnow quotes. "I got to figure everything out. I'm just trying to process everything and take a look at my body and my MRIs and figure everything out." And let me see what else. "It takes a toll on you. It really takes a toll on you. So I need to find a way to get back to Frank. And I don't regret any of this at all, but it weighs on you. And I'm just going to take some time and really figure everything out to make sure I'm feeling good. Not only for me, the football player, but for me to be the best husband and best father and everything with that as well." And we know about Frank Ragnow's toe, how it's going to be something that's going to bother him his entire career. And what happened in the game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He fought through a sprained ankle and a sprained knee, and he still played in the NFC Championship game. But is Frank Ragnow's health something that worries you going forward as far as the Lions repeating the same success they had this year and going even further on in the upcoming seasons?
Well, I think his quote is super telling in terms of how much he shouldn't have been playing and how willing he was and how unwilling he was to not play. This guy was going to be on the field. He was going to be with that team. He was going to make this run with them. And that's the kind of guy that I want. Now, this is his 6th year in the league. 4 of those years, he's played 14 games or more. He had the one season where I think he only played 6 games. This season, he only played 10. Listen, It's a brutal position, center. And I know that he's missed some games, but he's only 27 years old. He is a consummate Lion, new Lions. This is the mentality that we want. This is the pain threshold that we want. When everything's on the line, I don't want a guy who's even contemplating sitting. I want that Ragnow mentality. And when you hear a guy talk about it in the locker room and in the huddle, it's one thing. But you see a guy running out there limping and picking his ass up off the ground, barely able to get up over and over again, that charges the rest of the team up. And that's something that we can't lose. Now, you look at his contract, we take a $3 million hit this year if we were to release him. If we bring him back all of this next season, maybe he misses the first few games because he's coming back from surgery or something like that. But then you get a real chance to look at this guy, see how healthy he can stay during the year. And then if you don't want him next year, you get $5.5 million off the cap. You get a little help there, relief if you get rid of him. And then going into 2026, it would be $12.7 million. So they're in a great spot to be able to kind of hold, see who he is. But I don't think anybody in the regime, in the franchise, in that locker room wants to see Ragnow go anywhere.
No, and we would hope that certainly decisions don't have to be made about Frank Ragnow coming into next season, because let's just put Frank Ragnow in bubble wrap the entire offseason, not make him do anything, not make him exert himself in any way, shape, or form, because fortunately this is the offseason, and a sprained knee and a sprained ankle, those are things that you would think he would be able to come back from and heal from relatively quickly, and then be ready for training camp in the next season and all of that. But you just never know how much attrition his body has taken on, and we all know the issue he has with the toe. So Kool-Aid, I'm going to ask you as well. When you heard the comments from Frank Ragnow, when you've seen how he's played through injuries, and we can go back to 2021 was the year in which he only played 4 games. Other than that, he's relatively been available. Are you worried about Frank Ragnow in terms of his future, in terms of his injuries, in terms of him being here to help impact the team win even bigger than they did this year, or at least get back to another NFC Championship game?
It's always a worry. It's always a worry. It'd be silly to say that it's not. And it's horrible that it's with a player like Frank Ragnow. I wish that this man could find a way to get beyond the injury issues, but it's football, man. It's a tough sport. Every play, that line of scrimmage, I remember seeing a report done about how much the hits affect, especially the center, every single snap. For him to be exactly who he is, I think he should be celebrated a little bit more here in Detroit, but obviously with a lack of wins prior during his time here in Detroit, I don't know if he's necessarily going to get the due that he's needed, that's necessary, but I'm looking forward to Frank, if he can give it a go next year, being a person who can help the next guard. I'm hoping that the Lions have, and I'm sure they do because Brad Holmes has been brilliant, have that kind of next guy in mind that they think will step in, fill that place, and at least if Frank Ragnow can't really go because of injuries, that he's at least helping with the mentality and the mindset of whoever is going to step up next.
I think Frank Ragnow up to this point is getting more of his respect and his due, especially amongst Lions fans. I think he's somebody that Lions fans have always respected because we kind of knew that he was one of the bright spots on this team. I mean, he was an All-Pro during a Matt Patricia season. So, I mean, that tells you all that you need to know. But he's somebody that you feel good about, the fact that he's being on a winning team, the fact that he was almost on a team that went to the Super Bowl. We all know what happened. We don't need to talk about that again. But I just hope that for at least a couple of more years, he can be at least an approximation of who he was this year, or hell, maybe even get back to this, because despite having the toe problem and despite sustaining those injuries in the divisional round of the playoffs, he played well in the NFC Championship game. He continued to play well in the divisional round playoff game, and even 80 to 85% of Frank Ragnow is better than any other center in the NFL, because that's pretty much what you got this year. And he's still, by the numbers, those numbers are ridiculous. They're absurd. Those are Hall of Fame type numbers.
And he's only 27.
Yeah.
So if this guy truly gets healthy this offseason, I mean, he could improve, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he could.
And to be honest, to your point, I know Frank Ragnow's good. I know he's a big heart and soul of that line. I didn't know he was this good. I really didn't. Panay gets so much attention that I think he's in his shadow. Ragnow's in Panay's shadow a little bit. The fact is we probably have 2 of the best positional offensive linemen in the league right now.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that Frank kind of doesn't get the shine as Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell made first-team All-Pro, and Frank Ragnow made second. And Frank Ragnow certainly should have made first. I think they gave it to Jason Kelce more out of name recognition. And don't get me wrong, Jason Kelce is still a hell of a player, but he did not have the same season that Frank Ragnow had.
But Ragnow did only play 10 games, so I think given that nod to somebody like Kelce, I don't know what his statistics were, but anytime that you miss more than a third of the season, I think that hurts you in the award category. But I do agree, he's a little unheralded. I think that Detroit fans need to recognize this guy. And he's going to be here for a while longer.
Yeah, most certainly. And I would love nothing more than that. And Lions fans would certainly love nothing more than that. But if you want a good defense, which obviously the Lions need to improve on, Guardian Alarm is the way to go. It's a new year. Let Guardian Alarm offer you customized solutions from real experts. Our professional technicians take the time to recommend security and automation solutions specific to your needs. 24/7 professional monitoring. Call us anytime, day or night, and know that a Guardian team member will stay on the phone as long as needed. Technology backed by people. Your safety and security deserves technology that's been proven to work and people have been proven to care. Call 1-800-STAY-OUT. That's 1-800-STAY-OUT. Guardian Alarm, your local security experts.
At work and at home, we're there with smarter security solutions. Featuring complete automation with customized alerts and more. For over 90 years, we've been the company that's been counted on to protect what matters most, all with personalized service and care. Right now, for a limited time, receive a free video device plus free installation with a new home system. Guardian Alarm. We protect Michigan.
We aren't quite sure if they consume more beer or sports. Either way, the heavyweights are here. Live on Woodward Sports, daily 5 to 7 p.m.
Oh, yeah. Nothing.
G-G-G-G-A.
Oh, sorry. I forgot. There we go. Oh, cheers, buddy. I think we need to get you a pick.
For over 60 years, Fairway Packing Company has provided Michigan's finest restaurants, hotels, and casinos with prime beef, Wagyu beef, and dry aged beef. Experience the Fairway difference for yourself today. Visit the steak shop in Grosse Pointe Woods for grab-and-go steaks or order online at fairwaypacking.com. Welcome back to the Morning Woodward Show live on the Woodward Sports Network, and we just got done talking about Frank Ragnow and his value to this team and if there are any concerns about his injuries moving forward in terms of the Lions' future success with Frank Ragnow on the team. But now I want to do something with another player, another addition, kind of like it was in the last segment. I want to wax poetic about this guy. I assume that you guys will agree, but I also want to tell you something from the NFC Championship game that I most certainly did not like. But first, Anson, was Brian Branch a revelation this season? How impressed were you with his emergence pretty much from day one as a rookie defensive back?
I loved him coming out. He was a guy that I was really, really hoping that we would get. I didn't think he'd be there in the second round. And he was absolutely fantastic. And I thought from week one, he did not see the field enough. The guy is just so dynamic on so many different levels. His impact was felt right away. I mean, he had a pick six, week two? Week one? It was
yes,
week one
was
against
the Chiefs.
the Chiefs. I mean, that game alone, he put him right on the map. And this is a guy that should be talked about in the NFL for at least the next 6 years.
Well, he's fifth. He was fifth on the team in tackles, tied for second in interceptions, had the only defensive touchdown the Lions had this year. He was first on the team in passes defended, and he was tied for second on the team in tackles for loss. If you want to talk about a Swiss Army knife, somebody who was all over the field and making an impact, Brian Branch was certainly that guy. Kool-Aid, was Brian Branch a revelation? How valuable was he to this team this year?
Obviously very, very valuable. When you look at how kind of depleted this secondary was and how it performed in its place, Brian Branch was somebody that I didn't have those expectations entering into the season. He didn't just exceed my expectations. He was one of the best players, if not the best player on that defense, man. I don't think there's anybody out there, no Lions fan, not even the most hardcore Lions slappy, who could say that they thought that they would see this from Brian Branch. And it was like an attitude. It was a persona that he brought, man, when he started putting that mouth guard in his helmet and he was going to task, bro. Like, anybody that stood in his way, he was going to make sure they were getting blown up. Like, the hit that I absolutely love was when all of the talk coming into that Atlanta Falcons game was about Bijan Robinson versus Jahmyr Gibbs. And that hit, bro, I'm serious. Bijan is still looking for that helmet. He doesn't know where it went, bro, because Brian Gibbs made sure to welcome him to the NFL. A rookie made sure to welcome another rookie into the NFL. And that, to me, it just showed exactly his passion. It showed how much he wants to make sure all over that field that the offense has to know where's he at. I feel like when people are around Brian Branch, they're hearing footsteps. They have to think they're seeing ghosts. I absolutely love what he's brought to this team, and I'm hoping that that can be more and more infectious to the rest of our guys. Like, I know earlier in the season, Tracy Walker had some big hits, as well as Kirby and Iffy, but Brian Branch was just on a completely different level with this, man. The physicality, the ability to get into the backfield a little bit, the ability to kind of move around if they needed him to. He was a revelation for certain.
It was funny that you mentioned the Atlanta Falcons game, because that was a two-part, I would say, I don't want to say comeuppance, but Bijan Robinson was the talk of the rookies when it coming into that game. And not only did he get blown up by Brian Branch, and he didn't have a good game himself, I'm talking about Bijan Robinson, but Jahmyr Gibbs on the other side of the field had sort of, in his way, his coming out party, because David Montgomery didn't play in that game, and Jahmyr Gibbs rushed for 80 yards. That was the first piece of evidence to me that he could be an every down back. And yeah, I obviously agree with you guys when it comes to Brian Branch. I gave you the numbers. I think he was a top 3 defensive player on this team all season. I think he was the best and most consistent member of the Lions secondary all season. And that actually borne out in the NFC Championship game, because according to my favorite website that some of you like and some of you do not, Pro Football Focus, Brian Branch was the #1 rated defensive player on that team for that NFC Championship game. His grade was 77. But Matt Broder brought something to my attention the other day that I thought was interesting and in some ways kind of malfeasance.
41%.
He played 27 snaps, Brian Branch, in that game, despite having the highest PFF grade of any defensive player on that team.
41% of the snaps.
And I obviously know how you feel about it right now, but let me give you some further context. Brian Branch played 27 snaps, which was 41% of the snaps for the game, had a 77 PFF grade. C.J. Gardner-Johnson played 33 snaps and had a 33.9 PFF
Half
grade.
of the snaps in this game.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson was pretty morbid in that game. And you all know how I feel about C.J. G.J. Ife Melifonwu played 41 snaps, 63.5 PFF grade, and Kirby Joseph played twice as many snaps as Brian Branch, 54 with a 61.8 PFF grade. My question to you, Anson, is A, was it a massive mistake not to play him more? And B, why was that? Because you even heard Aaron Glenn at points in the season kind of saying that we're going to limit Brian Branch's snap count. I mean, I'm sure you disagree with that.
Why?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a guy that played less than 60% of the snaps only 3 times all year. Okay? He never played less than 50% of the snaps. The 7 games that he played 90% or more, we were 6-1. 6-1. This is your playmaker on the defensive side of the ball, not named Aiden Hutchinson. The only one that we have. Because obviously Houston didn't decide to show up this season. And when you take a guy who is your heart and soul of your secondary, and you sit him against the best offense you've seen in the NFC in the biggest game you've played all year long, that's where I have a problem with AG. How did this guy disappear? I know he's young, but you got Cameron Sutton embarrassing himself all over the field, playing 100% of the snaps. I know they're different positions, but Brian Branch had to be on that field. He should have been on that field for 100 snaps or 100% of the snaps. I'm sorry. That part of the game, there's a few other coaching errors that I felt were inexcusable. This was one of them.
Brian Branch has been their best defensive back all season long. Their best and most consistent. The best cover man on this team this year has been Brian Branch out of the slot, and that doesn't even take into account all of the numbers that I gave you in terms of his tackles for loss and his interceptions and all of that. And I'll always remember too how he played a big role in the Rams game and holding Cooper Kupp relatively in check, while
awesome
Cam Sutton was burnt toast against Puka Nacua
over and over.
And like I said, this isn't a hatred towards Cam Sutton or anything like that. It's more pro Brian Branch, because to me, he should have been playing more snaps all season long. He's been their best defensive back all season long, and I'm not going to say that it's to the level of malfeasance, because they did get as far as they did, but in the NFC Championship, in a game where you lose by 3, in which many other members of the secondary did not play as well. I didn't even mention Cam Sutton and Kendall Vildor, who Kendall Vildor let a ball bounce off his face. I'm just saying, Brian Branch should have gotten more playing time all season long, and hell,
Agreed.
maybe if he would have, he'd be Defensive Rookie of the Year. I still think he has a case, even with his limited snap count. Kool-Aid, I'm going to ask you the same question. Was it a mistake not to play Brian Branch more? And do you have any idea, as to why? Or do you think it was just a bad decision?
It's just a bad decision,
Gotcha.
man. Just a bad decision. I'm still sitting here like, as we continue every day, whether it's on these shows or whether it's just in our intrusive thoughts when we're alone, I continue to sit here and be like, why? I'm like, why? Everything was right there for the taking. Everything, especially when we talk about just kind of how bad the secondary has been at covering number 1 wide receivers. That means that you got to do an even better job at covering everybody else. And Brian Branch's instincts to me are something that definitely sticks out.
Man.
It definitely sticks out. And it's like, why not have that type of player on the field at all times if you can make it happen? Obviously, it's going to be tough to do that. But he's that type of player, and I'm hoping going into next season that they don't have any aspect of a repeat like that. He needs to be on the field. He's a playmaker. He's a physical guy. I believe that opposing offenses, like I said earlier, I think that they're looking, where's Brian Branch on the field? I'm not trying to get smacked by Brian Branch. I know that they're not trying to. He laid, for lack of a better term, he laid the wood, man.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
You hit it, man. He's the most instinctual player on that Lions defense. I love
Yes.
Maiden Hutchinson, and that guy is pure motor. Instinctual as well. But Brian Branch, the instincts, that word again, that he showed as a freshman in the NFL, you just don't see. I mean, like the Honey Badger, that's why I call him the Honey Brancher, because he's another guy that, maybe was a little undersized, that, talent-wise, what he did, his body of work in college screams first rounder. Yep. But he didn't go there. And this guy, like his nose for the ball and understanding and anticipation of things that happen.
Anticipation, yep.
And then his ability to capitalize on that instinct is it's exciting. It's a very rare quality.
Yeah, and Corey Berry says in the chat, B2 Bomber, which was his phenomenal nickname, by the way, should have played more, but I'm not going to act like he's a shutdown cornerback 1. And that's not at all what I'm necessarily saying. I get it at the outside corner position.
He's a safety.
Yes, you're kind of limited. Cam Sutton, I mean, with the Emmanuel Mosley injury, you kind of are stuck with who you got. And then whoever's on the opposite end, whether it's Jerry Jacobs, whether it's Kendall Vildor, whether it's been Khalil Dorsey or Will Harris, you're kind of, I'm not going to say you're effed, but in a lot of ways, it wasn't the best cornerback duo. More of my point was that I didn't want C.J. Gardner-Johnson taking any snaps away from him. I didn't want Iffy or Kirby taking any snaps away from him. I mean, I love what Iffy did this season. Iffy Melifonwu, especially in the last quarter of the season and in the playoffs, was phenomenal. Kirby Joseph was, I would say, a mixed bag, but he made some plays. I'm not going to act like Kirby Joseph was bad or anything like that, and I know that's not what you were saying either. It's just that Brian Branch is better than all of them, and Brian Branch got significantly less snaps than all of them, including half as many as Kirby Joseph, although as probably people, to the shock of absolutely no one, it was the fact that C.J. Gardner-Johnson got more snaps than him that really grinds my gears, because C.J. GJ was terrible in that game.
Even more so to his credit, man, another thing that I've loved about his character, about who he is as a football player and as a competitor, is that after each one of these games, you listen to him in the press conferences, and he's going over what he could have done better. We're like, wait, but you just had the highest grade. Wait, you just had a big interception. Bro, you're laying the biggest hits in these games, and his mind is consistently on, what can I do to get better? What can I do to get better? Not if this spot is mine to have, not I'm not splitting time with people and things of that nature. It's always about what he can do to get better, and I believe that type of a persona is going to help him moving forward in his NFL career.
You know, and the coolest thing about that is it's a mantra that's been shared by everybody on this team. You haven't heard anybody complain this year. You haven't heard anybody about, needing more touches or anything like that. It's all been, how am I getting better? How am I going to help this team get better? And that's another sign of BNL, something that we've never really seen in past Lion teams. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about anyway, but guys, there was always somebody grumbling, there was always some problem. You don't really see that with this team, and when you see young guys having that kind of attitude and saying the right stuff, man, it's not only an indicator of who they're drafting and the type of character guys, but how they're playing it down from the top down in the franchise. They're doing things right now. Yeah,
and Broder, he brings up an interesting point, and I just want to respond to it. Matt Broder, one of the future hosts of the Morning Woodward Show, starting next Monday, along with me and Detroit Kool-Aid. Just a little plug right there. But right, mid-season AG committed to playing Branch solely at the nickel. Unfortunately, 49ers schemed their offense to not allow Lions to play a nickel-heavy defense in the NFC Championship, and obviously that is something that goes into it with where you're playing Brian Branch. It's just that he's somebody that can play all over the field. I talked about how he was very good as the Lions slot corner this year. His coverage grades are the best on the Lions when it comes to just guarding the slot. I'm not saying he could have been a cornerback one. It's just that I think he's somebody that you got to find on the field no matter what. He's somebody that should be playing safety. He should be playing nickel corner. He should be playing slot corner. He should be playing all of that, because he is I think he's one of the most versatile defensive backs in all of the NFL, certainly when it comes to rookies. And that's what we saw in his last year at Alabama. What was I know he was knocked a little bit for his 40 time, but it was universal that he was one of the smartest players in the league. He was he led that Nick Saban secondary and was one of the best defensive players in all of college football. So that's something that I think he could have handled. He did handle for large parts of the year, and it's just disappointing that in a game where the Lions lose by 3, you look back at Brian Branch, one of our best defensive players, played less than half the snaps.
I think he is the Honey Badger 2.0. We saw the same stuff happen with him, where he slid in the draft a little bit. They wanted to keep him off the field because of his speed, but the guy just constantly makes plays.
Yes.
And that's what Branch does, and you just can't when you're so thin in terms of huge defensive playmakers, you just can't afford to take your best playmaker off the field that's not named Aiden Hutchinson.
Yep. And one of the evidences of why Brian Branch is one of your best playmakers, because the stats I gave you earlier: 5th on the team in tackles, tied for 2nd in tackles for loss, 1st in pass deflections, tied for 2nd in interceptions, and had the only defensive touchdown on the team. That's not just covering slot guys. That's just being all over the field and making plays. And
the numbers tell the story, but so does the tape.
So does the tape, absolutely, because that doesn't take into account too all of the hard hits he was laying, like the one against Bijan Robinson, for example. And Kool-Aid,
murder.
And Kool-Aid, you know what's funny? You talked about that as like a memory from this season. When we come back, we're gonna go around the room and talk about some of our best memories from this Lions season from all of us. I want you in the chat to give your best memories as well. But first, there's always a good memory when you have lunch or dinner or breakfast at Big Boy. Wintertime in Detroit is always better with comfort foods from Big Boy. Try the veal parmigiana or the new Southern Comfort Chicken Bowl. How about breakfast? The stuffed potato pancakes are back, the classic lumberjack or Santa Fe Garde. Also, new apple pie hotcakes that are too good to miss. Top it all off with the new gingerbread shake for dessert. Shop by your local Big Boy today.
Savor the heart of home at Big Boy with our all-new down-home comfort dishes. Feast on home-style goodness with our Southern Comfort Chicken Bowl, veal parmigiana, and apple pie hotcakes. The down-home delight doesn't stop there. Potato pancakes are back. Dive into the richness of our perfectly crafted potatoes with our classic potato pancakes and our stuffed potato pancakes. Top off your meal with our new gingerbread shake, a seamless blend of creamy vanilla and sweet gingerbread flavors. Nothing beats the comforting taste of down-home cooking. Enjoy every bite, only at Big Boy.
Love Woodward Sports? Love wearing clothes? Then you should be wearing Woodward Sports clothes. Check out our full line of merch at woodwardsports.com. Just click on shop. We have all your favorite designs, like Dan Campbell kneecaps, Woodward golf, and of course, our own logoed out merchandise. Men, women, infants, kids, all love Woodward Sports. Impress your friends. Impress your boss. Impress your dog. Buy Woodward Sports merch today.
Stop searching for a vehicle and start finding one. Les Stanford Chevrolet Cadillac makes it easy. We harness the power of multiple dealerships and own the biggest selection of GM brands in the area to get you the car you need. With the Les Stanford Group, you'll have access to 4 different dealerships, providing you with more makes, more models, and more choices. We're connected to more than 1,000 vehicles. And with so many high-quality CPO vehicles available, you'll find new car quality at pre-owned prices. You can start and end your search at lesstanford.com today.
RIP to the same old Lions. Big thanks to Sheila, Brad, and Dan for putting them to rest. And guess what else has found the grave? Same old rock, paper, scissors. Jack Labrador has revolutionized that tired game with 2 new symbols and a franchise-changing 3-point play. Discover the action at jacklabrador.gg now and find out why, once you go Jack, you never go back. Welcome back to the Morning Woodward Show live on the Woodward Sports Network. And oh, look at that. That is Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs at the Pro Bowl. Certainly well-deserved from both of them, particularly Amon-Ra St. Brown. He should have been in to start with. I mean, how are you first team All-Pro, but not originally voted on the Pro Bowl team? But regardless, it's good to see that they're still there. And kudos to them as well for being able to shake off a tough loss and still wanting to do something like this, because I know that probably is going to take them a while to get over, but hopefully they have fun at the whole Pro Bowl experience, and they certainly deserve to, because they were 2 of the bright spots of this season. And speaking of bright spots, I'm going to go to you first, Anson, because you got the unique opportunity to break down all of these games right after they were done. What was your favorite, or you can name 1 or 2, what is your favorite or some of your favorite memories from this fantastic Lions season? Probably the best you've ever seen in your lifetime.
Yeah, it is. It is. 91 was real special, and we had a great team, but they were all kind of in the middle of their careers. They weren't ascending young guys. And that's my first thing that I'm going to remember the most of this season, and that's the rookies.
Yes.
The rookies, I mean, all throughout the NFL, there's fantastic rookies, but the fact that we had 4 guys come in and impact this team as much as we did, that's something that's going to be really hard to forget. But the most dear memory that I have of this season is how we were embraced, not only here in the city, how everyone, I mean, we got videos of 10-year-old girls at their gymnastics practices chanting Jared Goff, Jared Goff. I'm online on, and streaming baseball cards and football cards, and everyone I talk to, man, we're pulling for your Lions. We're pulling for your Lions. And it's certainly something as a Detroit sports fan I never thought I would feel or experience, which is being the nation's favorite team, the nation's most watched team, the nation's most talked about team. Everybody in Detroit on Sundays, we were all doing the same thing. My sister's 22 years old at NYU. She doesn't care about football. Yep. She came home, was watching these football games with my dad. She's a football fan now. You see all of these people that have become Lions fans and football fans. This team galvanized the entire community, the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan. And that was the hardest part for me in losing that, was not coming back in here and seeing all of you guys on Sundays for the post-game show, knowing that people aren't congregating at every single bar and restaurant to watch those games, that every family isn't huddled around the TV ready for that kickoff. That was so special. And I've been part of, the 84 Bless You Boys was so fun. Yeah, I remember it. I was at Game 5. The 04 and the Bad Boy Pistons, I mean, it was amazing. The community always gets behind our teams, but nothing like this run this year. Seeing that come to an end is tough. And honestly, I will never forget that part of the 2023 Lions.
Wow, that's you're going deep with that one, but that's fair because the Lions, I would say, galvanized the whole city. And you're right. People who otherwise wouldn't give a damn about football were treating the Lions as must-see TV, and all of the bars that pumped about it, and those post-game shows would go on until the wee hours, and those were always certainly fun. And the keys to wisdom, this is an interesting one. Goff's turnover-free playoff run. That is certainly true.
Wow.
And yeah, no, I mean, but that's an absolute great one. And Kool-Aid, I know you mentioned the Brian Branch Bijan Robinson hit. Was that your favorite memory? Do you have another one, or maybe even a couple more? Go right ahead.
That was my favorite, one of my favorite Brian Branch memories.
Yeah.
But for the Detroit Lions, and I don't know who said it, you just read it. It was that Green Bay game, that takeover, because earlier in the season, we didn't know if this team was real. We were celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs win, obviously, but the national narrative was to kind of put an asterisk on that game. Going into our house of horrors, and I'm going to continue to call it that, it no longer is, because Queen Sheila and the North Guard, they went into Lambeau Field, and they took it over in a way I have never seen. I said this on Nights last night, bro, that used to be a place where every year we had to play them. I had nightmares of freaking Matt Flynn carving our team up and outdueling Matthew Stafford for a win. To be able to go in there and not just take over their team and their stadium on the field, but also in the stands, and to see our people walking around, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sheila, Brad Holmes, all these people walking around and celebrating with our fans in their stadium, seeing all of that Packer pea-stained yellow all around them. That to me was like, let's go. This team is something different right now. And the fans had bought in. The players had bought in. To me, it was almost like the kumbaya moment of the season. Yeah. It was perfect to me. And it kicked off everything else I thought we saw the rest of the way.
Packer fan, don't eat the yellow snow.
Oh, no. Do you know what I love about that one, too, and about your explanation of it? We're talking about how Lambeau Field was a house of horrors for Lions fans. Pretty much
decades.
I mean, decades. You can go back to the 60s even. I mean, Lambeau Field has always been a house of horrors for the Detroit Lions. And you bring up the Matt Flynn game, and they had almost 30 years of Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. I mean, we all know Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre tortured us so many times, but you bring up the Matt Flynn game, that even happened. That's unbelievable. And yeah, and the fact that the Lions were able to dominate the Packers at Lambeau Field, that's certainly a good one. Hopefully next year they don't lose to them at Ford Field. But you know what? That's all well and good because, but seriously, that would be nice. My favorite memory, and this is one that is more of a personal thing. I went to Ford Field once this year. I did the whole bullseye tailgate and everything with my mom and wife, and was there with Kool-Aid and DJ Don Mecca and Griffin and Brady, our sales guys from the back, Noah, one of our guys behind the scenes. They all do a great job, and some of them got to meet my family for the first time. Kool-Aid, I know you've met my wife and my mom a couple of times, but still nice to get everybody introduced again. We did all of that. But the funny thing is, that was such a fun day, and what my thought process was, I'm going to go to this tailgate, I'm going to have a great time, I'm going to have a couple of drinks because we were taking the shuttle to the game, didn't have to worry about driving, and then I'm going to go to Ford Field and I'm going to watch the Lions kick the Bears' ass and everything's going to be great. But that's not exactly what happened. The Bears were winning that game late. People were leaving. Jared Goff had thrown 3 interceptions, and the Lions got the ball back down 12 with a little over 4 minutes left, and I still thought the Lions had a chance, but the mood in Ford Field was just really down. It's like, we're going to lose to the fucking Bears. But then the Lions, they make that comeback. They get a quick touchdown highlighted by that Jamison Williams long pass. They get a quick stop, a 3-and-out. They get another touchdown, and it all culminated with that strip sack safety by Aiden Hutchinson. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I didn't go to the playoff games, but I certainly have went to a lot of big Michigan games. That Aiden Hutchinson strip sack fumble safety was the loudest I've ever heard at any pro sports stadium, any sports stadium ever. And it was the redemption arc. It was the agony of almost losing to the at the time 2-8 or 3-8 Bears, but then the relief of like, oh, thank God. Everything like Jared Goff, you threw 3 interceptions and you really done effed up, and then you totally redeemed yourself. It was that was a hell of a day.
Yeah, that's great. 8 years ago, I officially boycotted going to Ford Field. I said that I would not go back until they won a playoff game. So I get to go back.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to be doing the post-game show, so I probably won't be there. But I can go back if I wanted to. I've heard so many similar stories to where people had this emotional feeling and these moments at Ford Field that we've been waiting 20 years for at Ford Field. These moments where we really got to hear how and feel how loud and raucous and passionate this fan base is. And so there's a lot of stories that are similar to that, where people have these great memories of games at Ford Field, which realistically, there's not many good memories at Ford Field so far.
Yeah, and speaking of not good memories, Steve-O Baby in the chat trying to get me to bite. What was one of your worst moments of the season? We're not talking about that right now, because the good moments certainly outweighed the bad, and we want to maintain the positive energy. So, Steve-O Baby, nice try. I am not gonna bite, and I'm pretty sure none of you guys want to as well. Oh, but coming up next, we're gonna talk about Anson's true first love, and that is the Detroit Pistons. And it's even more apropos because we've got the Pistons insider himself, Detroit Kool-Aid, in the house. Hey. So shoot, I might have to just sit this conversation out, but that's all well and good. We're going to talk a little Pistons. But first, do you have football on the brain? Of course you do. With everything that's been going on with Michigan football, the Lions, the football in the state of Michigan, it's been great. It's been a variety of different happy emotions, some heartbreaking emotions, but with all of that, you should shop your home and auto insurance. Shop it like a pro with Swiss Insurance. They cover Woodward Sports Network, and they should be covering you too. Ask for Mark at Swiss Insurance today at swissins.com or call 248-800-4177. Again, that is 248-800-4177, Swiss Insurance.
Hi, my diamonds. It's Crystal with an X. You want to get hot and perfect like me? Here's my super easy routine. Drink at least a gallon of water before you wake up. Attach a weight to everything in your house. Hello? Sell your car and just sprint everywhere. Scream when you exhale.
Don't follow Crystal with an X. Do your own thing at Planet Fitness with tons of equipment and free fitness training in our clean and spacious clubs. Join now for just $10 a month and cancel anytime.
We don't like to brag that we are the toughest sports network in Detroit, but we do have a guy named Darren McCarty on our side. Woodward Sports.
Feel alive during Feldman Chevrolet's biggest New Year's sales event ever. Get the best prices on our huge selection of award-winning Chevrolets. Like this 2024 Equinox for $188 per month. Or this 2024 Silverado for $268 per month. It's the New Year's sales event going on now at Feldman Chevrolet, Michigan's #1 Chevy dealer.
Come to Lady Jane's Haircuts for Men for an award-winning haircut experience where they can give you an A+ haircut from the A+ stylist. Register to win a trip of your dreams and all expenses paid suite for the 2024 NCAA tournament. That's right, no expense spared for you and 5 of your best buds. Lady Jane's Haircuts for Men open 7 days a week. Walk in anytime. It's wicked awesome. It's funny, 40 Gumble in the chat. Thank you for the solidarity. They did Sam dirty with this video's thumbnail, and I would tend to agree with that. But of course, the guys in the back, they like to catch you with some of your lowest moments or some things that you say that they may disagree with and exploit that. But you know what? That's all well and good. I love them, and we all. Who are you if you can't laugh at yourself a little bit?
That's
but
right.
Speaking of.
Laughing at ourselves?
Speaking of laughing and probably having a lot of people laughing at us, unfortunately, the Detroit Pistons.
Nice segue, buddy.
Worst record in the NBA. Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of good to talk about so far this year, but we do have a couple of Pistons just diehards in the house, and Anson and Kool-Aid. And I wanted to just ask you, Anson, we all know that so far this year has not been good. I think a lot of people predicted more wins than last year at least, and the Pistons probably won't even get to that.
Nope.
But Anson, what would you like to see from this team, at least for the rest of the year following the All-Star break?
First and foremost, some trades.
Okay.
I don't want to see Bogey here come March. He better not still be here, Gores. You hear me? He better not still be here. You had your chance last year. You didn't do it. I don't want to see Killian on the bench either. He better be gone. Make a move. I mean, you got all of these veterans to appease your coach that you had to bring in that didn't even want to be here. That shouldn't be on the floor for anybody. Mike Muscala. And you got Asar Thompson playing 9 minutes a game now? I cannot figure out what the hell is going on with this team. And Kool-Aid, I used to love this guy. When he handed LeBaby his lunch back, the worst thing that could have ever happened to Beef Stew is the damn three-point shot. This guy camps out in the corner. He used to rebound, bro. He used to defend. Who is this guy that we just gave $60 million to? I know we need some veterans on the team, but Danilo Gallinari is so spent. I get that he played, 20-some minutes last night. He had some points, but why you are taking guys like Marcus Sasser and relegating him to the bench for people that should not be playing ahead of him when we need to develop players? I don't care if you win another damn game. I don't want to see Mike Muscala on the court again. Not for 6 minutes starting. Why is he even starting if you're going to play the man 6 minutes? Kool-Aid, give me an amen.
Look, one thing I do know is Muscala he got a little injured. So that might have affected things. I agree with a large part of what you're saying. If you're going to be losing, what we said for years when they were kind of mid, making the AFC
kind of mid
with a maxed out payroll, we said we would rather see this while we're accruing draft picks and letting the young players play. I do believe Asar Thompson was cost of this position at this Rising Stars game, in part due to the fact that his role has been up and down, up and down, up and down. To start the season, he definitely was one of your top rookies. All of the different places.
He didn't make the rookie sophomore?
No.
What?
Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren did though, which is a huge testament to Jaden Ivey. We know how his season started off, and for a long time it looked like maybe this guy is a trade candidate, maybe he's on his way out. But these rookies, every time they're given an opportunity, these young players, they're proving that these are the people that you need to put the investment in, not just in their playing time, but also what you put around them. And that has been the biggest failure for this Detroit Pistons team. They haven't done enough to put anything, a pulse around them. That's what kind of influenced partly the trade for Gallinari and Muscala. The one thing that they have done, them boys can shoot the rock, bro.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have somebody that can shoot, it's got to be them. Stewart was paid, but he was paid like a backup. The way that the new cap is going, new backup power forwards and centers are getting the contracts that Stewart's getting. So I understand it a little bit, but forcing him into a starting role, which is something I've been screaming, this is a crime for the last 2.5 years.
Amen.
That to me is the issue. If you put him on the bench and allow him to be able to just come in and be that kind of that heartbeat, that soul, that grit, that tough player that you say he is, he's not able to do that if you have him camping out at the three-point line, doing things that he's not really adept at doing. It's crazy being at these games, sitting with media, and all of us know as soon as he gets the ball, nobody's even really defending him at that three-point line. They're just packing the lane in and looking at him. And they'll say, we'll give him 30-something% of threes to you if that's what you want to shoot. Yeah. He will hit 30, 32, 33%. The issue is the fact that when he misses a couple in a row, which usually happens, and it keeps leaving him open, swinging the ball to his position, is when he hesitates and you know he's not going to shoot it, and they swing it back around. Well, by that time, what is your offense? What are you doing? There's no flow. There's no symmetry. What I want to see this Pistons team do the rest of the season, first and foremost, before we ever talk about what they do on the court, the litmus test for me.
Sorry.
Ooh.
Did I say that out loud?
But the litmus test to me, They have to do more to bring and to address what's going on this roster. I know that their big push is for the offseason. They've been saying that since last season. But I'm ready for this team to get things moving right now because I don't want these young players at all to have their psyche, their mentality, their roles all diminished because of what's going on right now. It's something that I can't. There's no excuses to be made for what the Detroit Pistons have looked like this season at all.
There's no excuse for a coach to make that much money and take a number 5 pick who's showing out to start the season and sit him so heavily to the point where he doesn't even make the rookie sophomore game. That's mind-blowing to me. This is one of the best rookies in the league, and you're not playing him at all. I got to know, though, man, like, you're talking about moving forward, you're talking about this offseason. This is a coach, obviously, that demands having some veteran leadership on this team. This is my plan, all right? I want Cody Williams, J-Dub's little brother. Cody Williams, that's who I want in the draft. This Alexander Sarr guy screams Darko to me. Miles Bridges, bring him home. And Paul George. You give Paul George, hey, we're going to give you the reins next to Cage. You're going to run this team as a leader. You're going to set the tone defensively. You're going to help him bring the ball up along with Jaden and the rest of those guys. You bring in Miles, who would just love to come back home and be given that second chance and be embraced by his hometown fans. And then Cody Williams, he's going to be better than his brother. He's going to be better than his brother. I don't see many opportunities for this team this offseason with the free agents that are available outside of some guys that can come in, take a little less than the big guys that you want, that aren't coming here. Newsflash, they're not coming here. But those 3 guys, we only have 6 guys coming back on this roster. 7 now, I guess? Sasser, Duran, Ivy, Thompson, Cade. Boom. 5 fantastic draft picks. Isaiah, who we also, re-signed, and then Bojan, who most likely better be gone, So those 6 guys, you add in 3 players like that, and it doesn't really matter what your fodder is in after that, because Paul George is going to set the whole tone for this team, and that's a player and a personality that this team hasn't had for years, and they desperately, desperately need. The poor man's option of that would be a Tobias Harris.
Yeah, and obviously they've been linked to players like Tobias Harris and Miles Bridges. Those rumors continue to percolate. Zach LaVine as well. But the one thing to consider is this. I actually don't want them to make a pick in the first round of this draft unless they actually trade back up. I believe that this pick that they can't trade right now, and this is another reason why I believe they're going to wait until the offseason to actually make the biggest changes. I think that that's going to happen then because they can select a player and trade that pick, trade that drafted player in a bigger package to be able to go and bring in help. The one way that they have added talent, veteran talent on this team, whether it's Jeremy Grant, whether it's Kelly Olynyk, whether it's been Bojan Bogdanovic, has been through, and even we see the effects of Muscala and Gallinari. They're 3-5 in their last 8 games since the trade. They had a good chance to knock off the Cavs. It helps. But the way they've done it has been through the acquisition market. They've always gone out there and said, you know what, we're going to trade for this person because that's something that they can control a little bit more. And even Blake Griffin, it was through the acquisition market. I know. But listen, the Pistons are going to have to overpay for whoever. Yeah. So whether it's a bad contract like a Zach LaVine or another player that they may target like a Tobias Harris, or whether they go into the free agency market, which I would rather them go to that market to be able to get kind of the fixings like your corn and your mashed potatoes. But the meat, that's going to come by way of a trade. I don't see anybody on this free agency market that absolutely wows me. I am okay with the Miles Bridges stuff. I understand his history and his past, and I do not condone, I do not excuse that at all. In terms of Miles Bridges, the player, I do believe he helps, but just kind of seeing him in person as well, the Hornets and the Pistons just recently played. There are some things there that lead me to believe as a two-way player, I don't know how much he helps, but as a player where you could put the ball in his hands and just kind of let him dictate his own tempo, he's one of those guys. I like that a lot better than if we're passing it out to the corner with Beef Stew out there. Yeah. So it's like they have the assets and the capital, but right now it's about, do you trust them to make the deal? My biggest head scratcher is this. When Joe Dumars was allowed to work, he was given both the GM title and president of basketball operations. Right now, I believe that the Detroit Pistons have too many cooks in the kitchen. If you're going to hire a GM, let that GM cook.
Absolutely.
Give him the president of basketball operations title. Because right now what we're seeing is he got hired in as a GM, but not the president of basketball operations, which means there's people above him, including Tom Gores, who are doing things like, you know what, we're going to let you hire a coach. No, we're not going to let you hire a coach. You know what, you're presiding over your first draft, but we already have Killian kind of pegged as the guy we want to draft, instead of letting him go and make the pick that he wanted to with that first pick. It's like even certain trades that have gone on, you go and you kind of look between the lines at who their agencies are, and you start to realize, oh, this wasn't a Troy operation at all. He hasn't been perfect. But I do know that he wanted to make some signings last season, and the whole push from the organization was, well, let's see what Monty Williams can do with this team first. There's even a rumor that floated out there that he was actually about to trade Killian, because who wants that $10 million cap hold this offseason? Nobody. Trade him if you can trade him, but supposedly the coach that Tom Gores hires, and when Troy doesn't, this is very crucial to understand. When Troy does not have player of basketball operations title, but the owner hires the coach, who's above who on the totem pole? It's going to wind up being that coach, and that's what wind up happening. So now Troy is saying we got to wait until this offseason to where we can properly address who this team is and how Monty Williams wants to play, and he wants a team full of vets with a little bit of the rookies or young players sprinkled in.
Matt Ishbia almost bought this team last year. Could you imagine the wet dream fantasy that would be?
Man.
Oh, man. Yeah. Man. It's the funny thing is I'm listening to you guys talk, and it's obviously, it feels a little bit like a therapy session, but also I think you both have some good ideas of how this team can at least
some
turn
righteous gripes.
Some righteous gripes, absolutely. I see some like preach Kool-Aid. I see that in the chat. A lot of positive feedback from both of you guys, because at this point, unfortunately, the Pistons, despite all of the, I would say, perceived good that they've done with some of their draft picks, they're still the worst team in the NBA. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and pretty soon you can't be having these like sub 20 win seasons for too much longer.
Trash, just like those teal uniforms.
But look, this is the one thing that I do know. I believe, and it's been proven underneath the Tom Gores era, that they can always go out there and sign those kind of mid guys that can get you an 8th seed. And now, in the past, they've knocked on the 9th and the 10th seed. Now that gets you into the play-in. The issue with doing that in the past is, what young talent were they surrounding that with? What young talent were they surrounding with?
Stanley Johnson.
It was Stanley Johnson and Andre Drummond. Now, if you go out there and get some actual NBA players, rather than Cade Cunningham having to facilitate with 7 other players on rookie contract deals, if you go out there right now and you bring in the same aspect of mid talent that they put around Andre Drummond and Stanley Johnson, who did make the playoffs in that competitive
and got swept.
The competitive sweep, right?
Stanley Johnson
he was in LeBron James' head, right? That was that game. If they actually make those types of moves to bring some toughness, to bring some shooting, to bring some guys that can get to the free throw line, and you are actually pairing them now with not Andre Drummond and Stanley Johnson, but Cade and Ivy and Asar and those guys, you actually have a pretty decent team.
Toughness, shooting, free throws. Paul George, you didn't like that idea. I know he's been injured. He's played almost every single game this year. That's a veteran leadership, ball-handling, defensive 3-4 that can play the 1. Miles Bridges is cool to bring here, but realistically, who's gonna be the veteran leader of this team? I mean, I get that Cade is the guy, but there isn't a veteran leader. That's Mike Muscala right now.
I'm not against Paul George being here. Obviously, injury issues concern me just a little bit, but Bojan Bogdanovic has had injury issues as well. So it's like, if you could bring in a wing, if you could bring in a guy who historically is one of the better two-way players the NBA has seen, I'm not against that. Somebody who's been on some pretty adept playoff runs, somebody who can actually help this young team from a standpoint of, a lot of these guys, they probably grew up watching Paul George do work. Yes. What his words are going to do are going to carry it, to me, a little bit further than Alec Burks and what Bojan Bogdanovic can say. They got to upgrade this talent around this young core ASAP.
Yeah. No doubt. And if they've got the core that you just mentioned, I mean, you add those 2 guys in there, you're going Cade, Ivy, George, Bridges, Duren, with Sasser, Beef Stew, and Nassar coming off the bench, and whatever we end up doing with this probably number 5 pick again, even though we're the worst team in the league, you know, I mean, that could transform this team and put these young guys into a completely different space where you could see this team push for a playoff spot next season. But you got to land some guys in the free agent season. Otherwise, this team is really just going to, unless they make that trade, like you said, if they can parlay that early pick into a legitimate player, I don't see a whole lot going different for this team unless they can really shake it up in free agency.
There's a lot of teams that are kind of looking to break it up. You know, when I'm down at the Pistons Performance Center, able to talk to some of the other media guys, shout out Mike Curtis of the Detroit News, Omar Sankofa of the Detroit Free Press, James Edwards of The Athletic, Corey Woods of MLive, and whatnot, Vince Ellis, who works now for Platinum Equity and such, used to be of the Free Press. When I'm down there and I'm able to talk to these guys and able to talk to some of Pistons PR, and I hear just what some of the other teams in the league are looking to do, it does give me a lot more hope, because the Pistons are one of those squads that are positioned to not just kind of take on the players with big contracts. Like, I know a lot of people are not necessarily sold on a Zach LaVine in that contract, but that's where the Pistons are right now. Those types of players like a Tobias Harris that will upgrade this talent, make this team a little bit better, and give Cade actual NBA players to play with, and not guys who are just coming out of college and still learning the game. They're in position to do that. They are in talks with other teams to get things done like that. But with Troy Weaver, you rarely hear what he's doing. Nobody saw Jeremy Grant. Nobody. And he left a contending team. He left a championship caliber team to come to the Detroit Pistons. That was a Troy Weaver move. Jeremy Grant not being here still, from everything I know, that was not a Troy Weaver move.
Really?
He wanted him to still be here.
Really?
That's as much as I'll say on it. Remember, that's as much as I'll say on it. But I do know that Troy Weaver is connected to basketball talent. He has relationships across the league. Dwayne Casey, too, who probably deserves an apology from a lot of fans. He has connections across the league, and he's still in his front office. His job now, aside from just advanced scouting on college players, is also advanced scouting now of NBA players, and that's working those relationships. They have everything in front of them. There are teams like the Pelicans, like the Bulls, and others across the league who are looking to break down what they have and either start over or kind of get going on the fly. And Utah Jazz, the Pistons are in prime position to take advantage of that market.
Sounds like Dwayne Casey's kind of a Will Robinson 2.0, huh?
That's certainly an interesting thought. And you know what? Thank you guys in the chat for people who say that, you know, we shouldn't talk Pistons. The chat was absolutely electric, and we get two people as passionate as Anson and Kool-Aid about it. I can pretty much take a segment off, which I'm not necessarily opposed to all of the time, and let you guys cook. But coming up next, we're gonna go at another one of Anson's greatest passions, and that's the Michigan State Athletics, specifically their basketball team. I want to let him give a bit of a state of the state or of the lake. But first, I have to tell you about one of my favorite things, and that is my golden retriever Jake and my orange cat Milo, because I give them all of their best toys, treats, and food from Premier Pet Supply. Give your pet the best like I give my pet the best. My golden retriever Jake is getting a bath there on this upcoming Tuesday, just FYI. Premier Pet Supply is hands down Michigan's best pet store. Same prices and all the conveniences of the online and big box retailers, with one major difference: family and locally owned and operated for 30 plus years. Over 60 brands of food with nutrition experts to help you. Same day local curbside and home delivery. Premier Pet Supply, give your pet the best. Visit their website at premierpetsupply.com.
Come to Lady Jane's for an award-winning haircut experience and register for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to win an all-expenses-paid suite for the 2024 NCAA tournament for you and 5 of your best buds. Lady Jane's, open 7 days a week. Walk in anytime. It's wicked awesome.
Woodward Avenue, the first paved road in America. Woodward Sports, the first sports network born in Detroit and made for Detroit.
What up, Woodward Sports? Dispo Dispensary is bringing you the ultimate experience for the big game in Vegas, and they want you there. You can win 2 tickets to the big game, plus a flight, hotel, and accommodations by following these simple steps. First, follow dispo.michigan, @ShowMedicated, and @ShowMedicatedCBD on Instagram. Like Dispo's pinned post, comment and tag someone you love to bring. Plus, if you repost on your story, you get an extra entry. It's that easy. Join the Dispo family for a chance to score in Vegas. The big game awaits. Follow, like, tag, and repost now.
You have an opinion? Make sure it's seen and heard. Corner, jumper, tweet us, hop on the YouTube chat, slide in the DMS at Woodward Sports on all social media.
Amon-Ra, I got a question. Obviously, outstanding year individually and as a team. Ben Johnson coming back.
Yep.
Surprised by that, or was that the expectation / hope?
I was a little surprised. But I'm excited. Super excited. I know the whole squad is. I mean, we can't wait. We got some unfinished business.
That's what's up, man.
Oh, you love hearing that from Amon-Ra St. Brown, of course, one of the young superstars on the Detroit Lions. Absolutely, first-team All-Pro, and he seems to have the right mentality. But speaking, well, I don't know if this is a great segue. The Michigan State basketball teams. Anson, I know you're a big-time Sparty. And
alumni?
Yes, alumni. And coming into this season... No, that's fair. I gotta add that. Coming into the season, I know the expectations for the basketball team were high. You guys were talking
Very
Final
high.
Four. You were talking national championship. You had Tyson Walker returning, AJ Hoggard, Malik Hall, Jaden Akins. Added a recruiting class that was highlighted by Cohen Carr and Jeremy Fears, Xavier Booker. The expectations were high. And I would say this season for Michigan State has been a bit of a disappointment, but the nature of college basketball is that nothing really matters until you hit March, and they still have the time to turn this season around. They certainly still have the time to even have a strong finish to the regular season, and I think they'll eventually right the ship. And they obviously, their last game was against the lowly Michigan Wolverines, and it was a bloodbath just as I expected it to be. So Anson,
that was disgusting.
That was what's happened to Michigan basketball is an embarrassment. But I'm sure you're very happy
It was all
about
about
that, Anson.
Beeline, baby.
And it was all about Beeline. Fired Juwan Howard, punt him to the moon. But that's not what this is about. We're talking about Michigan State since our esteemed guest, Anson, is here today. First off, have you been disappointed in this season, 1? And 2, what do they need to show you for the rest of the year?
Well, I can't say I'm too disappointed because I learned many years ago not to tune in until about February.
I got you.
All right. This team, I don't know what it is about Spartan basketball, but they just dick around. They dick around during the regular season. They always have. They've played down to opponents. They'll play up to bigger guys. I mean, Duke, Arizona, Illinois, all of those games were super close. Those are ranked teams. Those guys are all in the top 15. At the same point, Wisconsin housed us. We are 13-8. We're in that position where I've seen us so many other times. Are they on the bubble? Are they going to make it? And somehow Izzo's pretty much always been able to rally these guys, put things together in February, and we're watching these guys in March. So what do I want to see out of these guys? I just want to see March on the calendar, brother.
And that's 100% fair because Tom Izzo has certainly had a propensity for making Final Four after Final Four after Final Four. And this is one of his most talented teams he's ever had.
It really is.
I mean, especially certainly since the Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson year. But unfortunately for you guys, that season didn't end very well either. And I think one of the other questions that is being asked about this team, Xavier Booker was a big-time recruit. 5-star, one of the top recruits in the country. He's not getting a lot of playing time. Cohen Carr's playing time has been, I would say, spotty. And, of course, unfortunately, Jeremy Fears had that shooting incident at his hometown in which he got shot in the leg and is probably going to be out for the rest of the year. Or at least he hasn't played since then. So, Anson, do you have a problem with the freshman not getting enough playing time, or is that just kind of who Tom Izzo is and who he's always been?
It is who he's always been. I got to be honest with you, though, and I love Tom Izzo, but it might be coming to the end.
Okay, that's fair.
All of sports have massively changed in the last 15 years. What internet has done to sports and the interest level, and at the same time, this new generation, they do things differently. I mean, the guys that we saw battling each other in the NBA in the 80s and 90s, now you see these guys in love fests, and it's a completely different environment. I'm not sure that Izzo has gone with the times. I don't think that he stayed totally current. Now, obviously, he can still bring in great recruits, and he can still win games, but this is a team that chronically underperforms during the regular season. And if you're not playing the young guys, that shouldn't be what's happening. If you've got veteran upperclassmen on the court, you should be able to handle business during the regular season. And year in and year out, they don't. I mean, there's been very few teams that didn't stumble out of the gates that were supposed to be very good Spartan teams. Obviously, our 2000 class, that team was pretty great from start to finish. But this is a real concern. This is something that it's a mainstay of Izzo's tenure. Teams struggle during the regular season. And if you've got an NBA or a college NBA or NCAA now where these guys the good guys aren't staying past their first freshman year, maybe their sophomore year. So if you're not developing them now and you're not winning during the regular season, what the hell are you doing?
That's a great question, but the thing is, and two, why maybe them not playing Tom Izzo at Michigan State not playing the freshmen isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, we've seen what this team has looked like, and one of the presumable things you could think about is like, why not play some of the young guys? Why not play some of the guys whose ceilings is higher than even some of the veteran guys? But at the same time, the nature of college basketball, as you said, Michigan State can right all of these wrongs with a strong finish to end the regular season. And even if they don't do that, a strong deep tournament run, which we all know that Tom Izzo is very capable of doing, no matter how talented the teams are. Some of their least talented teams over the past 20-25 years have made Final Fours, and this team is talented. They could presumably turn it on. They've got Tyson Walker, and we all know what the tournament usually comes down to: guard play. They've got veterans who have been there before. So I, unfortunately for me, think that Michigan State is going to be fine, but I don't think any fans of Michigan State, including yourself or alums like yourself, Spencer Raxter, Griffin Lackey in the bag, are happy with how the season has gone up to this point. But the nature of college basketball, unlike college football, is you can stumble. You can have some bad losses. You can even drop some games in Big Ten play that you shouldn't. But as long as you don't do that too much, as long as you don't fuck around and not make the tournament like Michigan's done this year and the year before, you always have that chance to redeem yourself no matter what. And that's how it is.
And it's not a surprise anymore. We know that these guys are going to lose games they should not lose during the regular season. So for the Spartan faithful, hunker down, batten the hatches. I'll see you in March.
See you in March. Yeah, I would probably, if I were you guys, that is exactly what I would be saying as well. And unfortunately for me, I've got nothing to talk about when it comes to Michigan basketball because they have been absolutely morbid. And go ahead.
I mean, is Juwan, what's going to happen there?
I have, you know what my greatest fear is, and I've made this clear on air before, but I'll tell you, and for all of you who didn't hear that, here's my biggest fear. And I think that this is possible. I've watched a lot of these games. I was there at the Chrysler Center. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, for their loss this past Saturday against Iowa. But I wanted a nice evening with my wife, and Sharon Moore spoke at halftime, and so did Donovan Edwards, and that was pretty cool. But my biggest fear from watching this team, and I'm dead serious, is that Michigan does not win another game the rest of the year, and Juwan Howard is still allowed to remain head coach.
Wow.
I think that is on the table, and that just can't happen.
Distractions and losses, and he gets to come back?
Distractions, losses, and he gets to come back.
Wow. That
is honestly my biggest fear. I hope to God that it doesn't happen. I hope that's the type of thing that can wake everybody up, because I get it. We're still all, as Michigan fans, all on the high from the football national championship. And I've given the caveat that if Michigan basketball had to be sacrificed for Michigan football to get a natty, I would take that trade. But at the same time, it wasn't that long ago when from 2013 to 2019, I would argue that Michigan was the most successful Big Ten basketball program over that time period. They went to 2 national championship games. They had 8 first-round draft picks.
What was your window?
2013 to 2019. I would say that. Yeah, like the later 2010s.
I wasn't sure how big your window is. I'm not going to fight you on that.
2013 to 2019. Nothing before then or since then. I mean, before then, there was the beginning of Beeline, which was a mixed bag. He inherited Tommy Amaker and Brian Ellerby. That was obviously terrible. But what's happened with the Juwan Howard program, this is worse than Amaker. This is worse than Ellerby. This is worse than anything Michigan has ever been at this point. They're the worst Power 5 team in college basketball. They're 7-14.
Yikes.
7-14. That's impossible for a Power 5 team to do. And now that I've gotten a little bit of my depression out, and hopefully Anson has gotten a little Michigan State therapy himself, I personally think that they're going to be okay. And it seems like you do too, if they can make a deep playoff.
The talent's there.
A deep playoff. Tournament run. we can get to mailbag because we want to hear from the people. Drop your questions down for either myself, Anson, JB, or Kool-Aid. Ask away, ask us anything. But first, I have to tell you about Feldman Chevrolet, where I got my new car, which my old car broke down on the way to a Michigan-Ohio State basketball game. That is a true story, by the way. Didn't make the game, but I got a new car out of it. Feldman Chevrolet, Detroit's #1 Chevy dealer. Since 1996, Feldman Automotive has been driven to provide a fast, convenient, and first-class car buying experience called the Feldman Advantage. With 18 locations, there's a Feldman dealership in your backyard. Visit feldmanauto.com to find the location nearest you. Catch Woodward Sports Network live from Feldman Chevrolet of Novi every other Monday.
Feel alive during Feldman Chevrolet's biggest New Year's sales event ever. Get the best prices on our huge selection of award-winning Chevrolets. Like this 2024 Equinox for $188 per month. Or this 2024 Silverado for $268 per month. It's the New Year's sales event going on now at Feldman Chevrolet, Michigan's #1 Chevy dealer.
Thank you to all the fans for making Woodward Sports your #1 online destination for Detroit sports. We promise not to drop the ball.
Where's the most convenient place to get that big fitness energy?
It's Planet Fitness.
Join today for just $1 down, $10 a month. With over 2,400 locations and equipment for every workout, you can get in, get energized, and get going. And with free fitness training and most clubs open 24 hours, everyone belongs in the judgment-free zone. So join today for $1 down, $10 a month, no commitment, cancel anytime.
I think that got sauce.
Oh, Jalen out.
Oh, Jalen out. Uh-oh. Oh,
Minka by himself.
Oh, you gotta love a little Pro Bowl dodgeball there. And I feel like there's some correlation between that and mailbag. I don't know exactly what, but you know what? Welcome back to the Morning Woodward Show. And Eduardo O'Neill, damn it, you broke me down because you asked so nicely. I will answer it, even though there's a little bit of snark with it, but that's okay. Mailbag. What do the Lions need to do to build a defense like Sam's favorite team, the Chiefs? For the umpteenth millionth time, I'm not a Chiefs fan. I am a Lions fan, although, and I am not going to apologize for that, I am rooting for the Chiefs in this Super Bowl. I personally, if the Lions can't go on a dynasty, which they might be able to. Hopefully they at least get one. My second favorite outcome would be for Patrick Mahomes to catch Tom Brady in the GOAT quarterback conversation. At least when it comes to accomplishments. Hell, if he gets his third Super Bowl MVP, I don't care what anybody says. He is well on his way. As far as what the defense needs to do, I mean, I think continued development from some of the young guys, continue to draft well, hopefully add a free agent or two, and because or even maybe even be a little bit healthier. And I know that overall the health of this team, I'd say, was a net positive for the most part, but you had Aline miss 4 games. You had James Houston and Emmanuel Mosley miss for all intents and purposes the whole season. You had C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I don't think was that valuable anyway, miss most of the season. So a combination of things, drafting, development, health. I know that's kind of a standard answer, but that's kind of what they need to just continue the path, but maybe make a splash. Let me see what else we got. Mailbag, hips. Do you think St. Brown will hold out if he doesn't get a long-term deal this offseason? Man, that is a loaded question. No, I don't think so. I don't think he's that kind of guy, especially since he still has another year of his contract. But he is a guy that the Lions definitely need to, I would say, re-sign quickly, because he is one of the most valuable members of this offense, and I think he has a great rapport with Jared Goff.
I think the offensive big three, him, Panay, and Jared Goff, all take slight discounts.
Oh, okay.
All 3 of them.
That would be phenomenal.
It is a new Lions mentality. Same reason Ben stuck around, the same reason we're going to see these guys take a little less.
That is that's very interesting, because nobody expected Ben Johnson to stick around. You actually were one of the people that did. You know what? I'll give you credit for that. I don't think I gave you your due credit at the beginning. 2 off
seasons, I've been saying that he ain't going anywhere until he wins a ring.
Everybody in the chat, give Anson his flowers right now, because he does deserve it, and he was forward-thinking when it comes to that. I certainly was not. I thought that he was going to be gone.
Everybody thought I was crazy.
Yep. You were not crazy, Anson. Take your victory lap. Take your flowers. Steve-O, baby, you know what? You broke me down to. I will answer it, because I think this was a moment in which may have fueled the Lions to make some adjustments, particularly AG, and finish off the season strong. Mailbag, Sam, what was your worst Lions memory? Probably the Bears game at Chicago. That was the point where I certainly had some panic. I am not proud that I did this. but I will give a mea culpa, which I've given before. Anson, I came on the airwaves the next day and said Jared Goff blows.
Ooh.
I did.
He did in that game.
But I think that was but the funny thing is too, Anson, and I want to kind of do a side conversation from that. Stick, your co-host for all of these post-game shows, I thought at the time was like annoyingly too glass half full, but he was probably right all along. He never panicked no matter what.
No,
He's the biggest slappy of them all. No matter the loss, it was always just
pro-Goff,
yes,
pro-Lions.
Pro-Goff, pro-Lions, all of you are overreacting, we'll be fine. But that was the one time where I'm like, we're not fine. But you know what they did after that? They had that 2-game stretch against the Broncos and the Vikings in which they clinched the division, in which you saw the defensive adjustments, them getting more pressure. So the reason that I wanted to answer that question was because I think it would be used as fuel. Let me see.
Can't believe the Lions didn't lose 2 games in a row all season.
That's unbelievable.
That was fantastic. Because you get down on these guys sometimes, and then they always give you a reason to continue the next week. But not these Lions.
No, they have the way that they've responded through every loss, through every bit of adversity. That's why I thought at some point, especially in the first half of the NFC Championship game, here we go again, that there was an element of team of destiny to them.
Yes, me too.
I know that's not something that you can really quantify, but I felt it at times. It felt like, especially in that Bears game in which they tried their best to lose, the one at home that I went to, and they had a 12-point comeback with like 4 minutes left, that it's just like, this team is inevitable. They just won't lose.
Brother, it took an act of God to stop the team of destiny.
It did.
It really did.
Oh, yeah.
Off of Vildor's face, man. House Slytherin. Let's
then it almost seemed like that was the moment where it's just all the destiny was just gone.
Man,
but that's all right. Overall, this was a successful season. And you know what else I think? I think it was a successful Friday show. What do you think, Anson?
I had a blast.
Awesome.
I was really happy to be here, man. Short amount of sleep, about 2 hours of sleep. But honestly, 3 of my favorite guys here at the network. And I really did want to talk about Ben Johnson and NAG both staying, because I told you so.
You did.
So I'm happy to be here, man.
No, you most certainly did, and I was happy to have you on the show with me. I'm always happy to have JB Smoove and Kool-Aid. JB Smoove's a little under the weather. That's why you haven't heard from him much today. He specifically requested it, and I'm always happy to oblige. But you'll be hearing from him more on the new morning show, which starts next Monday. I'm going to plug it a little bit. It'll be Kool-Aid and Broder on the desk, myself in the flannel chair, and we're going to have JB in the audio booth and JB in the TD booth, and Ken G, who you guys all know. He's been on the morning show a lot in the sound booth. Cannot wait for that on Monday. I hope that you guys all tune in. And thank you guys so much for continuing to tune in during some interesting times here. But I will never forget that. I will always appreciate that. And thank you to everybody in the building who has continued to work hard and keep grind, because those are the type of people that we are. And all the love for all of you guys in the chat and in this building. Before I get too sentimental, I will sign off. Thank you guys so much for watching. Continue to watch the other Woodward Sports programming like Big D Energy from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. coming up next. And tune in next Monday for the revamped, relaunched morning show. It's not going to have the morning show name. It's going to be named something different. I have something in mind that I'm going to run by Kool-Aid and Broder in just a couple of minutes. We will see you then. Peace.
Sam, don't be mad at me.
Camera, can they? Oh yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Ready?
You started timing.
Oh my God. All right.
1, 2, 3, go.
1.
That's 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. 5. Oh